exchange. Yeah, this exchange platform is meant to talk about contemporary issues that are relevant to Malaysians. And for the first session, as we all know, for the past probably, some say it's 22 months, some say it's 2 months of political changes or upheaval in the country. So today we have our two esteemed guests. One is Professor James Chin, who is a professor of Asian study in the Asian Institute of the University of Tasmania. And the second one is Syahredzan Johan, who himself is a lawyer, activist, and also a political secretary. So we'll start with basically, this is a short session. It will be no more than 25 to 30 minutes. And we'll basically just to address, ask 3 questions. Yeah. So after my questions, I'll give 3 minutes for James and then 3 minutes for Shah. And then we'll go on to the second question. Then we'll have 3 minutes each. And then the third question and also the final one. Okay, so we'll start with James. So what exactly is happening right now in Malaysian politics? James.
Thank you for your kind invitation, Joshua. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon. So the way to understand recent Malaysian political events is that the change or the collapse of the Pakatan Harapan government to this new Perikatan government has been a long time coming. It wasn't something that sort of happened on Friday night, and Saturday night they decided to launch the coup. So if you were to do a real timeline analysis, I would argue that the real problem started on the first anniversary of Pakatan Harapan rule. The reason why I tagged the first anniversary was that because there were lots of things moving in the background, which a lot of people did not see. I'll go through some of the key themes or the key changes that happened after the first year. The first one obviously was that if you look at public opinion surveys after the first year, people were getting restless. As you know, Malaysians basically voted for outright change in 2018. So by December of that year, people started getting restless because certain things they wanted to change immediately did not happen. First, of course, was that they wanted the lower cost of living. Everybody knew that that did not really happen. Secondly, was of course the more symbolic thing. People thought that once we change governments, people like Najib and his cohort will end up in jail. In fact, that never happened as well. The trial was ongoing, so people were sort of getting restless. But the bigger issue was actually a shift in the Malay ground. By the end of first year, it was very clear that the two main Malay-based opponents to Pakatan Harapan was UMNO and PAS. They got closer and closer together. They understood clearly that in the rural areas, the results of 2018 was quite interesting. This is something that was totally not predicted by anybody, which is that the Malay vote was split 3 ways. You do not expect almost almost an exact match. If you were to do a statistical analysis, it basically came out to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So obviously on the UMNO and PAS side, it was quite clear that they wanted to pull down the Pakatan government, and their target was basically Bersatu. It was at that time after the first year of government that they started this very, what I would say, very dangerous narrative within the Malay area itself, or Malay polity, not so much in the urban areas, that this Pakatan government was basically a Chinese-controlled government. In other words, too much power was given to the Chinese. And of course, that led to the Malay Unity movement, all that sort of thing. But basically, it started from that first year. Now, within the Pakatan Harapan itself, I think after the first year, there was also concern raised about Pakatan in the sense that it was quite clear that the parties in the Pakatan itself were not really operating, how should I say, in a very cohesive manner. You can see public disputes, cabinet ministers taking different positions. The perfect example of things like Linus, which really sort of went out of control, but there were other issues as well. So within the party itself, there was no cohesiveness, losing support. And within Bersatu, the really important thing that happened was that increasingly among the Bersatu leadership, and I'm talking across the leadership, there was a sense that if things do not change, if they do not reset Pakatan Harapan, then it's very likely that the so-called 1/3 Malay vote won by Bersatu will be lost. In other words, PAS and UMNO will basically take over rural areas. and that represented a real danger, not for Pakatan Harapan, but for Bersatu. So it's very important to understand that the crisis was very much within the Bersatu thing rather than the whole Pakatan Harapan. So at this point in time, my analysis is that Bersatu started to have second thoughts about how to reset the coalition so that UMNO and PAS could not go around and talk about this narrative that this is a Chinese-controlled government. It is my understanding that it was also at this time that all the key elements came together. UMNO and PAS were also willing to talk to Bersatu. They were also desperate to pull down the Pakatan Harapan government. So there was basically a group of people within Bersatu itself who were already talking with UMNO and PAS people about how to reset the thing. So various models were essentially discussed, but I think what happened was that on Friday night after the presidential meeting, they decided that was the push button to pull everything together. So that's the reason why the message was also sent out to the political parties in Sabah and Sarawak. Everybody congregated, on Saturday, basically at the Sheraton Hotel, and that's why it was called the Sheraton Move. So I think the whole thing was not by accident. It's been planned for a long time, but once the process started, it became very messy. And of course, my standing argument is that the reason why Dr. Mahathir lost control of the whole process of change was that he made a strategic mistake, and that strategic mistake was that he resigned on Monday. If he did not resign, there was no vacancy. If there's no vacancy, then there won't be a rush to put out a new prime minister. Okay, so that is the big change in Malaysia in the past year. Now, what does this mean? Basically, what it means for Malaysia, and this is again my take on the situation. A lot of people, of course, will disagree, is that we're seeing the formation of a reaction from the Malay ground, which led to a very Malay-centric government. So whether you like it or not, this PN government, if you look at the three core parties, essentially Malay-centric. UMNO stands for Ketuhanan Melayu. Bersatu, which is actually a splinter group away from UMNO, also stands for Ketuhanan Melayu. And PAS, of course, have always stood for Ketuhanan Islam. So essentially, it's a very Malay-centric stroke Islamic focused government. So this in itself inherently created a situation, because we know that a sizable population of Malaysia are non-Malays, non-Muslims. And also, if you look at the urban areas, right, certain parts of the urban area, the mix is even much, much stronger. It could be 50-50. So as we head towards this coming year, I foresee a lot of maneuvering. I see a lot of political tensions. But by the end of this year, my prediction is that after the COVID crisis, right, all the political parties will essentially be positioning themselves for the next general election, because everybody I speak to understand that this crisis that we're seeing in Malaysia today cannot be undone by another reset. In other words, it doesn't matter which MP moves here, moves there. This sort of thing can only be reset by so-called the rakyat, the voters. The voters will have to decide at the next general election whether they're comfortable with the first model, which is Pakatan Harapan model, or they're more comfortable with the second model, which is sort of a Malay-centric model. So that's basically where we are now.
Okay, thank you very much. And actually, that part of your answer has actually relevance to the second question. But before we go to there, let's hear from Shah. What's your take actually for what's the situation right now? What's happening?
Well, I think right now we are, of course, facing this COVID-19 crisis. And of course, the mantra that everyone seems to throw around is that we shouldn't be politicking during this crisis. But I think that's far from what's happening. We have seen, of course, a few motions, and one of them is a motion of no confidence, which has been submitted and accepted by the Speaker of the Dewan Rakyat. And we have also seen political moves. Most recently is, of course, the changing of speakers in Malacca and also in Perak. Malacca, there was a big fracas in which, there were shouting matches and things like that. And finally, what happened was the PN Aduns in Malacca actually convened a sitting without the opposition Aduns in attendance to elect a new speaker. Of course, that's going to be challenged, I hear, but that's the situation in Malacca. In Perak, the speaker has actually resigned voluntarily. YB Nye has resigned. But even that, there was also some issue in which shades of the Perak crisis in 2009 was almost seen, where there are people who are going to remove the speaker had he not resigned and stood his ground. So that's happening in Perak. And of course, the most recent change in terms of the leadership is, of course, in Kedah, where it appears that 23 aduns have expressed that they no longer have confidence in Dato Sri Mukri's leadership in Kedah. So right now what we have is these people have expressed this, and the all eyes will be on His Royal Highness the Sultan of Kedah to see what happens, to see whether he's going to grant an audience, because although they have expressed to say that they no longer have confidence in his leadership, that doesn't automatically means that the government falls. It could continue as a minority government, for example, unless a new MB is sworn in and things like that. So things are still happening in Kedah, which is slightly ironic in the sense that after Tan Sri Muhyiddin became Prime Minister, Bersatu has actually lost two states, or two MBs in two states, or will lose two MBs in two states. They have already lost Johor to UMNO, and they're going to lose Kedah to PAS as well. So there is a price, I suppose, that Bersatu has to pay for Tan Sri Muhyiddin to become Prime Minister. And talking about Tan Sri Muhyiddin, I think the appointments to GLC chairmanships is also going to intensify in the next, I suppose, few weeks. We thought that it's going to be the case leading up to the Parliament sitting on the 18th, but it will appear that the Parliament sitting on the 18th there's not going to be a sitting proper, but just a speech by the Yang Tun Agong, and that's it. So it looks likely that there's not going to be a sitting, and that means that there's no chance of the motion that has been submitted by Tun Mahathir to be tabled on the 18th. Will he try again in July? We're not sure. It depends on the strength. So I think whatever happens, what we're seeing now is the aftermath of the Sheraton move. We thought that things would have settled after the state government's falling and after the cabinet has been sworn in and things like that. But still, things are happening, and it will be the case, I suppose, for the next few months at the very least.
Okay, then that would lead to our next topic. Actually, what can or what should we anticipate in the next 3 months or so? Yeah, Prof. James, what should we anticipate?
I think most of things that we anticipate has already been covered by Shah, but I think we can also expect on the East Malaysian side, I think the state of Sarawak is gearing up for a state election. So we can expect a lot of movement on the East Malaysian side. I just want to add on to what Shah says about what the government is doing in terms of the COVID-19 thing. I think the problem with the COVID-19 is that because so much attention has been paid to COVID-19, especially the daily briefings by a civil servant who's becoming more popular than the health minister. A lot of other things that's happening in the background, like he mentioned, the wholesale change to the GLC, that is just a small thing. There's actually a much bigger change at the civil service level. So for example, they're going through ministry by ministry, actually replacing a lot of people. So basically, what we're seeing is a consolidation of Perikatan government, and each of the three parties, interestingly, are trying to push for their own people. So they're not very cohesive. UMNO and PAS seems to be moving in one direction, and Bersatu seems to be moving in another direction. I think you will see a consolidation, but I think within the party itself, there will be a very high level debate happening now in Bersatu about what to do with Mahathir. I think one of the points you forgot to raise, Shah, is that Mahathir is in a very, very unusual situation now.
Yeah.
Everybody is looking at him as the alternative prime minister. But you know, right, under the British system, the alternative prime is the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
And nobody looks towards him as the alternative prime minister. And the other interesting thing is that we Malaysians, we no longer ask the question, can you actually wait for a 95-year-old person to save the country? Nobody raises the issue of age. But anyway, putting that joke aside, I think it's important that we understand the tension in Bersatu, because Mahathir is both, one of his legs is in Bersatu, he still remains the chairman, one leg is on the outside trying to replace Muhyiddin. So I think that tension will boil over the next 3 months. Obviously, they must try to find a formula, because otherwise, as I said, by the end of this year, right, all the parties will have to get ready for the coming general election. You cannot roll out, your plan for general election when the chairman of your party is still running around trying to pull you down. The other, you occasionally hear of stuff on the other side that they're also discussing how to bring this or formalize this Perikatan together. Because I think one of the debate that's currently happening now is that how do you deal with UMNO renegades in the first case, those who jump into Bersatu, and also what do you deal with Asming Ali and his group? So you hear all sorts of rumors circulating in Kuala Lumpur that maybe Perikatan will end up with a fourth party, which is Asming Ali and certain members of UMNO, whatever it is. But whatever it is, all these things are being negotiated in the background. And the reason why we don't read about it in the media or in the blogs is because everyone is concentrating on COVID-19. So I suppose I have to be slightly differ from my friend Shah by saying that although on the surface it looks like COVID-19 has stopped politics, in reality, in the background, things are still moving. All sorts of people are still planning for the scenario of what's going to happen by the end of this year, whether it will be a 3-party in Perikatan or 4-party things. So having said that, like I said, please don't forget what's happening in East Malaysia, because I think the Sarawak state election is very, very important. Because this is the first time in a long, long time where the ruling party in both Sabah and Sarawak are not part of the what they call it, the federal government. Pakatan government, you had the same thing. Warisang was not a formal part, but they were a strong ally. Now it's the reverse. Sarawak is a strong ally of Muhyiddin. I don't use the word Perikatan because they just want Muhyiddin to be in power. I'm not sure they support Perikatan. But you have a situation where Sabah and Sarawak may go their own way, and that's the reason why you saw the recent case where they did a deal with Muhyiddin. In return, basically a large number of Sabahans, Sarawak ended up as ministers and deputy ministers in the federal cabinet. This is the first time I can think of where the numbers actually came very close to 1/3. So this is quite important, and I think it's important that people living in Peninsular Malaysia understand that things are not what they seem.
All right, thank you. And about
sorry, Shah. I think Shah wants to say something.
Yes. How about Shah? What can we expect?
Just move. Also, taking on the point of Bersatu, I think also Bersatu will have to have its elections. I know the ROS has said that party activities will be suspended, but I think that's until June. So now Bersatu was supposed to have its election, I think, in April or May. So that needs to be sorted out. And the big fight there is, of course, between Tan Sri Muhyiddin and Datuk Sri Mukris, where both will be vying for the for the presidency of Bersatu. Of course, we know that if Tan Sri Muhyiddin wins, then he'll be able to bring Bersatu to still with Perikatan. But what's going to happen if Datuk Sri Muklis wins? What's going to happen to Bersatu then? So I think that is, I suppose, the battleground within Bersatu that will have to be sorted out soon, and I think it's going to happen in the next 3 months. We've also going to get the CEC elections in DAP, in my party. Perhaps not in the next 3 months, but that's also going to be important as well for the party. And moving forward, going into the next general elections, Professor has talked about GE15. As it stands right now, from what we're hearing, is that a lot of people, at least in the UMNO Supreme Council, is not in favor of a formalization of Perikatan Nasional beyond the current government, meaning to have going into the next GE to have a formal coalition. And I think it's something that is quite sensible for them to have this reservation, because you basically have three main Malay parties who go after the same seats. So you're going to have a problem trying to negotiate the seats, and certainly UMNO being in its position. I mean, it's a weakened UMNO, but it's still a formidable UMNO. They're not going to give up seats to what they see as their rival, and certainly they would have to do it with PAS, and now they have to do it with Bersatu. So that would have to be sorted out. I know that there are people within Bersatu who wants to have this formal setup, but I'm hearing a lot of resistance from UMNO itself to having this. So I think this is something which Bersatu members again have to consider as well. If they do go into the next general election on their own, without PH, without Muafakat Nasional, then they're not going to survive. So these are things I suppose the grassroots Bersatu members would have to deal with and would have to debate and decide on as we move along. And I can't, of course, speak much with what's happening with East Malaysia. I'm not based there, but certainly as in terms of politics, what happens in East Malaysia is going to have a lot of ramifications nationally, and even more so now, as Professor said, where these two states become very important partners to Semenanjung-based parties in federal government. So it's something that we'd have to look at, and the nation would certainly be looking at what happens in Sarawak over the next few months. Joshua?
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we there's so much to talk about, and then you guys have do splendid, very good job. And okay, we cannot end the conversation about Malaysia without hope. So okay, each of you have 1 minute to summarize what message of hope do you want to share with Malaysians. We start with James.
Okay, thank you, Joshua. So I think it's a very, very hopeful sign that Malaysians went through regime change in 2018 without any violence, without any breakdown of the institutions. We also went through another regime change 2 months ago, again, quite smoothly. Some people may say that's a negative thing, but in fact, what it has shown is that it is possible to change government, to have a peaceful regime change. As you all know, right, before 2018, one of the so-called urban myths is that, if UMNO lost power, the army was stepping, you go to another major thing, blah, blah, blah. So I think it has been shown that Malaysians have reached a certain stage. It is possible to go to regime change either through the ballot box or through the back door, whatever door, and that the system itself will still run fairly smoothly. So I think that's a real positive. The second positive thing, I think, is the COVID-19 crisis. If you look at what Malaysians are doing, people are actually helping across all the different ethnic groups. You see a lot of people, providing rice. You see all sorts of NGOs giving rice. They don't care which background you're from. They're just giving outside. So in a sense, Malaysians have sort of crossed the barrier of the fear of regime change. Secondly, the COVID-19 crisis has shown that it is possible to work across ethnic lines despite the nasty politics.
Oh, thank you very much for your message of hope. Okay, Shah, what message of hope do you want to bring to Malaysians?
So on the second anniversary of GE14, I just like to say that 2 years ago, we voted out a 60-year-old government. And we must remember that that in that election, the ruling coalition only managed to garner about 33% of the popular vote. And it's a lesson, I think, on why governments should fear the people instead of the other way around. Of course, 22 months later, the government that was voted in fell, not by voters, but by politicians in posh hotels. But I think that should not mean that voting as an exercise is a futile exercise. That should not mean that the people of Malaysia should give up on politics. That should mean that we, the people of Malaysia, should make politics better so that we never have the situation where the government that was voted in fell through, the machinations of elite politicians in posh hotels.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that should end with a very positive message about the strength and resilience of Malaysia in Malaysia people that can bring. This is the people themselves that can bring changes to the country and to the political scene. So again, would like to really appreciate and thank you to both of you for spending time and sharing your thoughts and also your observation on Malaysia politics. So next time we will invite you guys for different topics. So thank you very much and have a nice day.